So please join me in welcoming the CEO of E.L.F. Beauty, Tarang Amin. All right, Tarang, it's great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Thank you for being here, and thank you to Kate and Melinda. Kate's the head of investor relations, and Melinda, head of corporate communications. They're here from E.L.F. as well. Also want to thank the folks from Let's for taping this session, as well as Haley Houston from events, and certainly Susan Leva from my team and from Marcom for doing all the work to get us here, because it always takes a village to do these events. Everyone in the audience, they may not know all of your most recent accomplishments, so bear with me. Congratulations on being named Modern CEO of the Year by Fast Company, for achieving 24 consecutive quarters of growth, fostering innovation through a diverse team, and driving both purpose and profit. Tarang, you've publicly emphasized E.L.F.'s commitment to diversity, including a campaign for corporate board diversity. You've maintained DEI initiatives despite industry pushback. And here we are in March, it's Women's History Month. And 7 of your 9 board members happen to be women. So that's the feel-good stuff. Let's talk about the numbers. E.L.F. passed $1 billion in sales in 2024, and share grew from 4.5% in 2019 to 10% in early 2025. Okay? But, and here's the first question. Sales slowed in January. Tariffs are here. And you took overall Wall Street guidance down for the year. This would be a very opportune time to retreat from DEI. At least stop talking about it. So why? Why not?
I'd say the short answer is because that's who we are, and you got to be who you are. I think companies have gotten in trouble of kind of saying they were for DEI and then pulling back the first sign of resistance. People can see through that, and it's not authentic. First of all, in our results, we did have a poor January, so we pulled down our fiscal year sales expectations to 27 to 28% sales growth, which is about 5 times the household and personal care average. So we still feel great about our growth. In fact, in the last 6 years, we've averaged over 30% net sales CAGR. We're also the only cosmetics company out of about 1,000 that's built market share 24 consecutive quarters too. So I think we do have the authority of the results that are behind us. There's nothing that we're apologetic on that. But in terms of a little bit more on E.L.F. and why we have such an important stance on diversity and inclusion, our mission is to make the best of beauty accessible to every eye, lip, and face. And the every is really important. And as we bought the company 11 years ago, one of the things that we set out to do is we felt that if we're going to serve and make the best of beauty accessible to every eye, lip, and face, we felt having a company that reflected the community that we serve, delighting our community is our first value, would be a competitive advantage. So I'm very proud that our workforce is 74% women, 76% Gen Z and millennial, over 44% diverse. They absolutely reflect the community that we serve, and it gives us a huge competitive advantage. We've never done a focus group, never done that much outside research, because our employees have a pulse exactly on what we need to go serve. But we didn't want to stop with just our employees. So we're one of 2 public companies out of almost 4,000 in the US that have a board that's 78% women and 44% diverse.
Right.
We feel that also it's important that with that tone gets set from the very top. And I think we also have a view that business has a role for societal good. So the fact is, we don't want to be one of only 2 corporate boards that have those kind of demographics. So we set aside, we have an initiative called Change the Board Game. We first partnered with Billie Jean King, the equality champion, to serve up basic facts on how homogenous America's boards are. We then did a pretty provocative campaign on Wall Street, took over Wall Street, the Oculus. I'll describe the billboard because I don't think we're showing it. Imagine a billboard that has a bunch of white men. And the headline is, "So many dicks, so few of everyone else." And the basic insight behind it is we actually coded all 36,000 board members in the US, public board members. There are more men named Richard, Rick, or Dick than entire underserved populations. Almost twice as many as Hispanic women, about the same number as Black women, more than Asian women. And our basic premise is, look, there's nothing wrong with being Richard, Rick, or Dick. We just need to make room for others. And so to that end, we also partnered with the National Association of Corporate Directors, where each year we're sponsoring 20 women and diverse candidates go through their Accelerate program to get credentialed for board service. So it's just one of the things that where we live, we always say we're purpose-led and results-driven, but living that purpose and what we believe in is very much who we are, and that's not changing.
Great. Now, I know you all won't believe this, but Tarang and I actually met 30 years ago. I know we don't look it, when we both worked at Procter & Gamble. So I want to ask if you can share a little bit about your origin story, and including what led you to E.L.F. Beauty.
Sure. So I spent 20 years in large consumer packaged goods companies. I was with P&G, with Paul, at the Clorox company as an exec there. But I tend to back all the way up on my origin story. I'm of Indian ethnicity. I was actually born in East Africa. My dad used to work in Kenya, so I was born in Nairobi. Spent part of my childhood in Kenya and Uganda, and we immigrated to the US when I was a child. Like many immigrants, the way we rose was entrepreneurs. So when I was 14 years old, we sold our house, we took every penny we had, and we bought our first motel on Route 1 in Alexandria, Virginia. Moved right into the manager's apartment, and our business model was basically we'd find these distressed properties, we'd fix them up, we're good operators, and we kept building the business up from there. The reason why I tell the motel stories when anybody asks about the origin story is as good a training ground as P&G brand management was, I tell people everything I know about cash flow, economic profit, how you treat people, really came from those early days building up our family business with my dad. And then being able to take those same entrepreneurial skills and apply them to scaling larger businesses. I've been in the consumer space now, 34 years. I actually started in beauty many years ago as part of the team that relaunched Pantene in the early 90s, realized well before many of you were probably born, but we took at the time was a $50 million hair care brand, and over the course of 8 years transformed it to a $2 billion market leader in hair care globally. Since worked pretty much every major consumable sector. I worked everything from paper to food to pet, healthcare, nutritionals, again, back now to beauty. If it's an everyday consumable product, you've probably been around the space one time or another. I'm absolutely passionate about building brands. The best way I know how you build brands is you lead the innovation in the category. But what I love doing the most, and I'll talk about this more a little bit later, is assembling these high performance teams. I always brag that in 34 years of being a consumer, never had a business we haven't grown multiples where the category is growing. And I always attribute it back to the team and the culture that we create. And so went from kind of small family business to P&G, Clorox. My last company was a company called Shift Nutrition. It was my first public company CEO role. Brands you might know would be Airborne, Move Free, Mega Red, nutritional supplements. We built that company up from about 180 million to $1.5 billion, selling it to Reckitt Benckiser. I've now been CEO of E.L.F. Beauty 11 years.
11, okay.
We found the company, the great founder story with the company. They were ready for that next stage of kind of scaling the business. And so, yeah, it's 11 years in. Although every time I get a new candidate, I always tell them, oh my God, you're joining us at the exact right moment because we're just getting started. And I fundamentally believe that. And so that passion for the consumer, for the team is very much part of kind of my DNA and what makes me really happy to work at E.L.F.
Because even with your success, your business in China is still relatively small, yes or no?
Yeah, we manufacture in China, but we don't actually have any business in China.
Okay.
We had a small e-com business a few years ago, but what we found was the structural economics in China was much more oriented towards prestige skincare than mass brands. And so a better market for us is India, where there's a much greater affinity kind of for value, English speaking, very, very strong and social. So international for us is one of the main growth vectors as we go forward. Only 20% of our business is international. Many of our peers have about 70%, and we're kind of sequentially rolling the brand out country by country. And it's been a pleasant surprise. Every country that we've launched in, we've kind of debuted at kind of in a top 3 position. And what we find is there's our strength in social in the US, much of that's consumed outside the US. So I remember it was a few months ago, we launched with Douglas in Italy, which is a prestige house. And we asked them like, hey, how much should we customize this brand? We don't even have any Italian employees. What should we do? And they're like, not much. Italians like hot American brands. Sure enough, the day we launched, there were lines all the way down the block.
Right.
The only disagreement we had with them is they said the number one SKU in all of color cosmetics in mass and prestige is our Power Grip Primer. They said, hey, by the way, primers, Italians don't use primer. It's not a thing here. And we're like, we're a digitally native brand. We test and learn. Why don't we throw it in there and we'll see what happens. Not only are we the number one brand at Douglas Italy, but Power Grip Primers, the number one SKU. So apparently Italians did need primer. They just didn't know it. And so that's actually been a really cool thing for me as we're expanding the brand just to see how it resonates in every market that we go to.
And you started to talk about this, but let's maybe dig a little deeper. Scaling a company means embracing new processes, but you've managed to keep that startup ethos. So what practices, what philosophies, how do you keep that dual piece going about a startup culture but scaling?
Yeah, so we've had the luxury. We have 600 employees. We've hired 594 of them. So we've got the luxury of kind of handpicking each person for the team. So I'd say it first starts with who you select for the company. And a lot of what we interview for is culture and culture fit. So we always look for people that are humble and hungry, that have an incredible curiosity, a sense that they can grow with us, they can move at our speed. And then we do a couple of things that differentiate us from a lot of our competitors. First, going all the way back to my motel experience, I saw the power of owning something. So we're one of the few companies in consumer that grants meaningful equity to every single employee every year. And if you exclude the executive officers, since our IPO in 2016, we've granted $180 million of equity in a stock that's gone up 6-fold. So we believe in meaningful wealth creation for the team. We're not shy about talking it. But we find that level of ownership. I'm not just working for a company. I actually have a piece of it. Kind of creates this alignment. We also have a one team, one dream approach. Everyone's bonus eligible, but that bonus isn't some complicated formula of your personal multiplier times the business unit times something. I always use in bigger companies. I always like, oh my God, can you just tell me what I'm getting paid? It's based on the adjusted EBITDA of the company, and that bonus we pay out at 0 to 200%, but it's based on the adjusted EBITDA, and everyone gets paid out the same percent. So you get this thing of like one team, one dream. We're in it together. We'll rise or fail together. I think we've had 6 consecutive years of paying out at 200%. So it kind of makes people feel like winners. We take away the disincentives of one function, kind of fighting against another. We're in it together. It's not about like what your job is. But the most important thing we do is we train. There are lots of team frameworks out there. We have a specific one we use. We call it our high performance team framework. And we train people on how you develop passion relationships, how you give pinpointed feedback in the spirit of helping the team succeed. the mutual accountability. This particular body of work came from the former head of HR at PepsiCo, who had done a study on their high post, high performance, high potential candidates. And he found most of them, when they were put in key leadership roles, failed. And as the head of HR, he thought that was incredibly wasteful. They was investing millions of dollars developing these people, and most of them weren't working. And his insight was, we all have bosses. I have a boss. It's the board of directors. Over time, everyone knows how to kind of direct up. Even if you're not a great coach as a boss, most people know how to get what they want out of their team. The biggest detractor was the peer-to-peer interactions. And it wasn't like people wish someone ill. It's just patterns develop over time if you're not giving feedback. And giving feedback is really hard. So we're not assumptive on it. We have an entire kind of E.L.F. University whole section. It's kind of the mandatory part, ongoing training. How do you feedback? How do you get feedback with a growth mindset? How do you do it? What we find is that allows, one, we take away the friction points of keeping kind of people from collaborating with each other. But two, when we take away the crutches, so that we don't even have, like, for a company our size, we're unusual and we don't do performance reviews, because I don't want the crutch of waiting a year to give someone feedback. You have to give feedback constantly.
Reviews at all?
No reviews at all. We do development plans. So once a year, we want you to talk about what your career aspirations are. We're very big in leveraging strengths, because our view is, if you have a diverse team, if everyone's leveraging their unique strengths, the overall team is stronger. So we focus on, tell me about 2 strengths that you want to further master. Tell me about a development opportunity. We'll do that. But the reason why we don't do performance reviews is, I saw it in bigger environments. One, it bummed everyone out. No one ever liked them. I remember being at P&G. It was like, I'm a number 1 rated, or I'm like a number 2 rated, and the difference between 1 and 2 wasn't even that much. But 1, you felt like a winner. The second, you felt like a loser. And it didn't matter. Everyone got paid about the same anyway. So it was just kind of such a waste of time. And the angst that went into it kept you away from what you're really after, which is, let's talk about how you get better, how you learn. And because our comp model is based on one team, we don't, but because we give a lot of feedback, it is high performance. We don't believe in putting people on performance improvement plans. We'll have a respectful conversation. Hey, how you doing? Is this working? I don't think it's really working. Let's figure out where we can find you somewhere else. So I don't want to make it seem like it's all super rosy and it's like kumbaya. It is definitely about performance, but that performance and the speed comes from if you're giving people feedback regularly and you're receiving feedback, the team itself gets better. And then we do other rituals. I do a product. We're known for our product innovation, our ability to take inspiration from what's happening in Prestige or our community and introduce it. I do a product review every 2 weeks. That is an open meeting. Anyone in the company can join the product review. Our CMO, who came from Prestige, at first was horrified. He's like, oh my God, these are our nuclear codes. How can you let everyone in? And I'm like, well, it'll ensure that we're staying fast. If somebody beats us with one of our ideas because it leaked, and things ever leaked. It's a very committed team. But what I'm doing in that meeting is, it's actually one of the meetings where I actually like having my iPad out, and all I'm doing is looking at the chat. I'll throw out open-ended questions, like, why are we so excited about these bronzing drops, right? And I'll just see the thing light up. Okay, Carly, what do you like about that? See what the debate is open. I mean, the reality is nobody's ever going to accuse me of being a makeup enthusiast, but I got an entire company that is absolutely passionate about the category. And so that ability and role modeling, learning, getting feedback, where it comes from, and really any function, any place. It's one of those small example of that speed. Every 2 weeks, we're talking exactly about what the product concept is, what the design is, the formulation approach. Our labs are co-located with our headquarters in Shanghai. We can usually get prototypes in a couple weeks, and in a category where the average time to market is often 2 to 3 years, we can go from initial idea to selling in about 26 weeks. So it's that speed, and really, I'd say the most important thing to speed is the culture you create, to make sure everyone knows that their opinion matters, and that we'll agree, we'll disagree, but we'll commit and we'll keep moving.
Right. So talk about that. You disagree or agree to disagree, but how do you make those tough calls? How do you make those decisions? And it feels like a ton of inspiration from that type of engendering that response. But would love to know how you make those tough calls, and then how do you stay inspired in the midst of all of this?
Yeah, so I would say, I'll give you a couple tough calls we've had to make in our history. The founders of the company were very interested in retail stores. So we had, in the early days, 26 retail stores. In 2018, our business hit a slow patch, and we really force you to take a look. I always say, we can handle any reality, you just need to know what the reality is. And in that particular one, we looked at kind of what the data was. The problem is those stores were in malls that were never going to see a better day. And we're investing quite a bit of money in it. And so we made the difficult decision on the same day, but they were in these long leases that were really hard to get out of. We said, that shouldn't keep us from doing what the right thing is. So on the same day, I remember it was earnings in 2019, in February of 2019, we sent 26 of our leaders out to all 26 stores. We wanted to personally tell the associates what was going on. We paid 3 times severance, but it still was painful. We're letting 200 associates go, and we shut all the stores down on the same day and then asked the mall operators to come negotiate with us because they hate an empty storefront. So I'm using that as an example because it was a painful decision, but we also then, part of the decision process, we took the $16 million we're spending on the stores and we doubled down on our digital business and our national retail business on immediate kind of impact right away. So a few of the factors we use on decision making is understand what reality is, understand what the facts are, objectively kind of step back and say, okay, what's the right thing for the long term of the business? And just as important, speed of decision making is a strength of mine, but more important I've found over time is talking people through how you made that decision so everyone can follow. So that's a big part of our stage gate meetings, our product reviews, is let me tell you why I'm picking this price and the factors in it, and then being open to other people's thoughts on other input coming in and being able to do that. And then the inspiration, I'm very big on always putting myself in someone else's shoes. If I got this decision, do I understand it? Do I understand the criteria behind it? How would I feel? I'm very big on kind of those, part of what we do is we give a Myers-Briggs type indicator to everyone. Nothing magic about that, but understanding how someone processes information, where they get their energy, how they view the world around them helps. So I'm a big F, I'm off the charts on an F. And I kind of always try to take that approach of, okay, if I got this news, how would I think about it? What would I need to know to unpack that decision? And so the communication part of decision making is actually, I would say, just as important as the decision itself. Because if you don't have everyone tracking to why are we doing things, what are the principles, it becomes hard. And then inspiration for me is always our community and our team. So that's a part that I always love, is seeing people really unleash their own superpowers. And again, in a diverse team, the more people are doing that, the better the entire team is, and celebrating those successes.
Got it. So your target audience is in this room.
Yeah.
This was one of the most well-received events that I've tried to do in my 4 years here. How do you stay in touch with this group? I mean, well, how do you kind of get that, understand the passion that comes from?
I get a lot of inspiration from our team itself, which is our target audience, so that helps. But then, we also do things to directly communicate with our community and make it clear that we're open. My CMO, she drags me on every once in a while on a TikTok live. It's kind of traumatizing to me, actually. She'll drag me on TikTok live. We'll have I'll see the screen going, the chat going. Yeah. And she's like, all right, you got the big boss, tell him what you want, right? And I remember being on a TikTok live about a year ago, and the thing started lighting up. It was like, Drunk Elephant has these bronzing drops. I love them, but it's $40 or $38. I can't afford that. Bring them. And so I'll be looking at the chat and I'll be like, yeah, okay, you guys want bronzing drops, right? And then all of us, another 100 chats will go like, no, we want them now, boss man, get us those bronzing drops. And I'll leave the thing, like I said, a little traumatized. I'll call up my head of innovation and I'll basically be, oh God, please tell me we have bronzing drops somewhere in our product pipeline.
Right.
And she's like, yeah, we do. I'm like, oh, great. But it's 18 months away. I'm like, oh no, I cannot go on another one of those TikTok lives and tell them we don't have the bronzing drops. So we launched them 6 months after that TikTok. And that openness of like, hey, we want communication with the community and letting them know, hey, you asked for this, is why we had a massive hit last year in our lip oils. It was a very similar thing. Christian Dior had for almost a decade these lip oils that were, again, close to, I think, $40. And our community is like, hey, E.L.F, help us out. We can't afford it. And then what we'll do is, part of that curiosity is we'll also study with the consumer, what do they like? And what they liked about the Dior lip oils was the glossy finish, the saturation of color. But we'll also find out, back to this curiosity, what don't they like? And what they found is, for some consumers, the Dior lip oils kind of dried out their lips. The applicator was super small. Lip oil is something that you got to apply throughout the day. So when we introduced ours, a completely different hydrating formula, a much bigger doe foot applicator, and probably most importantly, $8 instead of $40, right?
Wow.
And the beauty of that is, when you're giving your community what they're asking for, and you're having this dialogue that's very open, we didn't have to do any marketing on the lip oils. The day we launched them, like the next day, there were about 1,000 videos of people like, oh my God, I love the E.L.F lip oils. I think it's even better than the prestige item. Here's where we're going. And so that virality of the brand and making sure we're embracing and listening to that has been a key enabler for us.
Got it. I asked some questions from folks before we started, and they said, when you think about E.L.F, you think about the viral AI video or the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade AI commercial. Did it surprise you, sounds like it didn't, that these moments would outperform traditional content? Did you expect that, or is that another part of the learning journey?
Well, I think it's part of our learning journey, and I think I'm always surprised by the reaction we get to a lot of the stuff we do, but it goes back to our strategy. We're here to delight our community. So a big part of that is we live with where our community lives. I know a number of years ago, this is pre-pandemic or around the pandemic, I remember my CMO coming and going like, hey, we need to be on TikTok because that's where Gen Z is. I'm like, well, if that's where Gen Z is, absolutely. Now what's TikTok, right? And I'm finding we're always learning, but it doesn't change our approach to always trying. So when we studied TikTok, this was years ago, we were like, oh, a lot of music, a lot of dancing. So we commissioned our own song. We did Eyes, Lips, Face, a song. That challenge ended up getting about 3 billion views.
Okay.
And we're on our way. By the time others were copying
billion?
us, 3 billion.
Okay.
By the time others were copying us, we'd already partnered with Simon Fuller. We created a virtual band on TikTok, or a band from TikTok. The challenge we did on that one to find the makeup artists that would go around with this rock group we created generated 15 billion views. And so we're always looking for those signals from our community, but the key part for me is making it authentic to what engages them. We have, we're probably the only beauty company with our own, or the first beauty company with our own channel on Twitch. Again, all these are based on insights. 70% of our consumers play video games or watch others play video games. So we never ask ourselves, does a beauty brand belong here? If it's a way for to engage our community, we'll do it. We have the #1 branded experience right now on Roblox, 21 million plays, 96% rating. And so I think that's the piece. It's like this volume of trying different things, learning, seeing where we're getting positive signals, and then being able to advance those. It's funny, the AI videos, I've had so many people tell me, like, we did one, it's basically our Power Grip primer, and all the other, those big giant balloons, all these other ones coming and sticking to it, because it was, to say it was sticky. I had so many friends say, like, how did you get the balloons to do that? And I'm like, it's AI. But they thought it was real, and I think more of it for me is we're always looking for the signals of where does engagement come from, and then I'd say just the curiosity and the humility to say, like, we know nothing about TikTok, we're willing to learn.
Exactly.
We know nothing about some of these other core areas, and then pleasantly surprised by what we get back, and that gives us the fortitude to kind of keep marching forward.
Got it. And I do want to follow up on something you said, Tarang. You said you in your journey, you didn't start in the beauty business, but you spent the last few years there. What advice do you have for these students who want to either break into packaged goods, consumer goods, or beauty?
Yeah, so I'd say a couple of things. I'd say #1 is curiosity and a quest for learning. I tell people the longer I'm in business, the dumber I get. The more questions I ask, the more curious I am. And so I'd say that's a lot of what we look for, is that passion and curiosity in a particular area. And then, going out of your way to kind of, if that's something that you're really passionate about, learn more about, get some of those experiences in there. And, but otherwise just dive in. I mean, I was Paul and I were at Procter and Gamble, one of the things I liked about the P&G brand management interview thing, I remember my undergrad major was international policy, and some of the, when I was doing my MBA, you know, sometimes like sales and trading, it's like, well, tell me how international policy relates to sales and trading, and I'm like, it doesn't. Whereas P&G was a lot more about what were your leadership experiences, where were you able to kind of envision a different future, how did you energize others in that future and enable great results. And so when I found the interview really easy, because it tapped into what was your leadership, what was your ability to get things done. But I usually look at those things in terms of kind of leadership profile, curiosity, kind of how much is someone investing in kind of learning and understanding. And then back to this peer-to-peer multifunctional collaboration. These days, nobody does anything by themselves. It's all based on teams and making sure you understand, like, hey, this person's gonna fit our team well. They're gonna come in, they're gonna have ideas, they're gonna wanna work with others in a good way. That would be my general advice.
Got it. Well, I know my kids want to be as far away from marketing as possible. Did your kids follow in your footsteps, or they're choosing a different path, or chosen a different path?
They chose a different path. So our son was a computer science major, worked at Google, went back, got his master's in computer science and his MBA. So he's actually doing an AI startup right now. And so he's in that zombie phase where, you know, they're not sleeping, they're just trying to get this thing off the ground. Our daughter, she ended up doing things in the impact space. She worked for Fair Trade USA, measuring the impact of their work. She actually spent a brief time with Amazon as they were starting up their supplier management on, they weren't actually tracking a number of things that they probably should know about their vendors. And so she did that. So no, neither of them wanted to do what I did.
Got it. Now, you were in a recent Harvard Business Review article, and you talked about how you personally engage with your team through weekly emails and events like afternoons with the Amins. So you talked a little bit about this, but say some more about what other things you do to build this internal culture that seems incredibly strong and every team member feels empowered.
So one is that approach I talk about on high performance teamwork, which sets the expectation that we want everyone to bring their full self to work and engage. But then I do a lot of other things to make sure that we're not being assumptive on the communication. You know, when the pandemic started, we knew the pandemic was not going to be good for color cosmetics. Everyone's kind of locked at home and in lockdown mode. We knew that was going to be not great. So we made a commitment early on. A lot of beauty companies at that time were laying off people, cutting back on their marketing support, stopping kind of new product innovation. We made a commitment. First of all, we weren't going to lay anyone off. We're going to get through this together. Second, we kept up our pace of new product innovation and marketing because we asked our community. Our community was suffering and said, like, oh my God, we need engagement right now as we went through. But one of the other things I did when that period started is I said, you know, we're going to have to actually up our communication with our team. So I started doing a weekly email. I think the first one was kids and pets. Like, we all have kids and pets. Don't worry about if they come into frame. Like, get over it and, you know, introduce them. But then, you know, let's do that. I think our second one, back to we're not going to lay anyone off, was like very business oriented, like cash is king. Like, we're not going to lay anyone off, but preserve like what the cash is that we have. And then over time, they became more personal, where I would talk about something about, I did one, and probably a couple of years ago, that was a tribute to my wife, Ernie, on our 30th anniversary and our journey together and what that meant. And this week will be week 258 of my weekly email. Haven't missed a week in 258 consecutive weeks. And the reason why I kept them up well after the pandemic ended is every week I'll get a couple dozen employees write me back, depending on what the topic was, and share something personally about them, and it just creates that connection. That's one tool. If you're a director and above, my wife and I will fly you and your significant other to our house, and we call them afternoon with Amins, with small groups, maybe 20, 30, sometimes 40. But it's our opportunity to personally thank each person what they do and their significant other for what they do for them and for the team to connect. So we're very big on these connections. We have stated goals. We had a goal last year on a certain sales, the $1 billion sales, over 200 million in adjusted EBITDA. We then said, hey, if we hit these goals, we're taking the whole company. Took the entire company to Cabo and did 3 days there. A lot of learning, a lot of business, but also just a lot of fun and having the team connect. So our culture is one where it is about those individual relationships and it's kind of the team relationships. And we make sure that no one's kind of resting on core communication. We do a town hall every 2 weeks where we're celebrating what's going on our leadership team, which is directors and above, where we can share numbers because they're insiders. We get them. So I would say the word I'd use is a great deal of transparency.
Right.
I feel like if you feel you're part of something, if you know, most logical people presented similar data, make similar conclusions or flows. So we want to make sure that people understand this is where we are. January, we had a huge launch last year with our lip oils. We've got good innovation this year, but it's not nearly as big as our lip oils were last year.
Okay.
We saw with the LA wildfire, social conversation really came down in January. Nobody wanted to be tone deaf and post while the devastation was going on in LA, uncertainty around TikTok. So we had a hit, and our approach back to communication is we don't act like no one's going to notice, like let's sweep it under the rug. We're very clear with the company of, hey, let me tell you exactly what we're facing right now. Let me tell you what we're doing about it. It solicits other ideas of, we got a launch in June. I think we can move that up to April. And I didn't dictate that. That's the team coming back saying like, okay, thank you for laying out exactly where we're at. We think this one is going to resonate in the environment that we're currently in. So as you can tell, I can go on and on and on about our communication, but communication is really the key of how we bring everyone along.
Well, I want to ask you about your board. So before Questrom, I worked at a regional bank called Eastern Bank, the most progressive company I've ever been a part of. Lobbied for transgender rights, lobbied for women on boards, lobbied for equal pay, lobbied for immigration rights. And when people ask me, like, how can you do that? I would say, the superpower is that the board of directors supports it. And when the board supports it and the CEO is there, then it can happen and happen in a sustainable way. Can you talk about your board and how you've enabled them and maybe how they've enabled you to do what you're doing?
Yeah. First of all, the journey. When we bought the company, it was my family with private equity, the private equity backer of my last company.
Okay.
And our initial board looked like a lot of sponsor boards. It's mainly a bunch of white guys and then me. And when we decided we were going to take the company public, I set out I want a world-class board, but it also represents the community. So a recruiter I've known for many years, I gave her the charge. I said, Abby,
okay,
we're going to create this board, and I want it to be better reflective of the community we're serving. And so that's what got us kind of our board stats. And it's been a huge advantage, right? Because they have it's not just their gender and race diversity, it's their thought and experience diversity. That's equally important. I've got, a board spans, the latest board member that we appointed is Maria Ferris, who's the head of partnerships at Netflix, had the head of partnerships job at YouTube before.
Oh, Kenny wasn't the most recent.
What's that?
Kenny.
No, she was right after Kenny.
Right after
was so Kenny Mitchell was before her. He was the CMO at the time of Snap, now CMO of Levi's. And but Maria is great because we often think of ourselves as an entertainment company that happens to sell beauty products. And so Maria being at the kind of the central element of everything Netflix is doing in that partnership space, she has a ton of value. Doesn't come from consumer, doesn't have beauty experience, but has really important business experience. Kenny Mitchell, especially when he was CMO of Snap, was in the same kind of core target area of what we're looking at. And so that board has enabled us to do, similar to your last company, a lot of what we do. There's never we keep them abreast. We communicate a ton with them as well on the stances that we take. We knew we were potentially open to attack based on our stance on diversity and inclusion.
Sure.
So So we let our board know, like, hey, look, we're taking this stance because this is who we are. We only know how to be who we are. It ties to the ethos of the company. It spreads all the way through. Not even a question with the board, 100%. You gotta live that ethos and what you end up doing. So it helps us not only in the quality of counsel we get on different topics, given their varied experience sets, but also that alignment of these are the values we stand for as a company. And so you don't have this weird thing where like we're marching in one direction and the board's in another.
But it sounds great, and so many more companies can and should be doing this, but they're not. I mean, it's got to be tough. I mean, how do you deal with the challenges? Or maybe I'm being Pollyannish. Is it how do you deal with the haters, with the folks who say, just waiting for you to stub your toe?
You and I had so many years of those experiences of, I call it the BS excuses. It's about available talent. It's about, which experience sets. And I tell people all the time, I wish I could tell you it was hard having a board that's 78% women and 44% diverse. It was not hard. All it took was intentionality and action, right, where you put it through. And I hear way too many examples of that. I'm on another board, the J.M. Smucker Company, food and pet. And they had a simple mechanism. Obviously, they're in Northeast Ohio. It skews very white male. And they did a simple tactic. They just said, hey, when you have a interview slate, we'd like there to be diverse representation on that slate. That one simple tactic, they found that almost 70% of the offers were to a diverse candidate, and 95% accepted their offer. It's helped. I mean, they still have a long way to go, but sometimes people make it out to be so much harder than it is. Like we have such tremendous talent on our board,
right.
But the hardest thing is picking who the next board member is, because we always get presented incredible talent, and so I never understood. That was a little bit of why our Change the Board initiative came into play, which is like, let's just shore up the facts. Let's do the things we can do, including using us as a case study, as well as what we can do with NACD. And then allyship is important too. We've had so many companies reach out to us and say, hey, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you got there? And we would be part of this too. So I wish I could say it was hard. That was really heroic, but it wasn't. It was actually pretty easy.
Got it. What would you say are the unconventional strategies that you've taken that set you apart and that your peers are still surprised about?
Well, I'd say the biggest one is our very proposition, right? Mm-hmm. The best of beauty, prestige quality at a fraction of the price, right? That is probably the toughest thing for somebody else to replicate. And it's our entire model. It's our innovation engine is connected with our supply chain, how we've honed that, what we've done. But so many people are boxed into a certain business model, right? In order to get the margins they need, they have a cost structure that's fundamentally different. It's like almost impossible for them to get that. As good as our prices are, the thing I'm most proud of is we've taken up our quality scores every year for the last decade. Right. Okay. So you actually is what consumers are saying is true. Many times we actually are better than the prestige inspiration at that value point. So I'd say the fundamental proposition itself was quite radical. And I give credit to our founders. They had this 20 years ago. They had this idea of selling cosmetics over the internet for $1. And this was 2004, pre-iPhone. People thought they were crazy. You couldn't sell cosmetics over the internet. You certainly couldn't make money at $1. And they kind of figured that first part. Right. So there's that disruptor DNA, or that disruptor gene is very much part of our DNA to this day. And then I think it helped us being a digitally native company. Inherently, it's all about testing and learning. It's, we always laugh. It's amazing how little we know. But that doesn't keep us from marching forward and trying and doing different things. And so whether it be the marketing examples I gave in terms of trying things that other people aren't trying. Right. I mean, we dropped, it was a few years ago, we dropped a holiday album, right? Like what business is this beauty company off of our success on TikTok? We saw the signals. We had 4 of the spots hit like Billboard's top charts on that. We just did another one. We just dropped another album of a couple months ago of Get Ready with Music. It's under the insight that a lot of women get ready in the morning listening to music. So we found 10 emerging artists, put that together, threw that out there. We've done long form entertainment, short, a lot of the stuff we talked about in AI.
Yeah.
So that's actually the part, unconventional. Like, in fact, if we see something that looks like it's conventional, like some other beauty company, it's almost like dead on arrival. It's like, why bother? Like, we have a lot of respect for L'Oreal and Estee Lauder and Coty and the giants in our industry. They have a different business model. So that ability to understand, are we doing things that meets our ethos?
So did you do anything for the Oscars last night, or?
We didn't do anything for the Oscars. We tend to avoid the things that are overcrowded. So like we had this thing 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, we had this insight for the Super Bowl. And mind you, we'd never done TV. But we had this idea where it's like, 50% of the audience almost is women. If you look at most of the commercials, this is now probably 3 years ago, if I think about it. If you look at most of the commercials, like beer ads and a bunch of things that doesn't really talk to half the audience is female. So in a 3-week period, we, from initial idea to airing on the Super Bowl, we did it in about 3 weeks with Jennifer Coolidge on our Power Grip Primer and playing off the stickiness of Power Grip Primer. And we didn't even do the national buy. We just back to test and learn. We said, like, what can we afford? We could afford 10 DMAs. We did it on the 10. We saw great signals. So last year, actually, we did one with Judge Judy and the cast of Suits on our value proposition and her sentencing someone for using prestige makeup, expensive makeup. And we saw billions of impressions off of that. It was great. This year, we chose not to do the Super Bowl because we paved the way. But then this year, we saw there's going to be like 8 beauty brands advertising the Super Bowl. A lot of people will copy what we ended up doing. We ended up doing a live stream during the Super Bowl running. So for the 3-4 hours of the Super Bowl with different personalities, we got incredible engagement. We did, instead of the Super Bowl, we did the Puppy Bowl, talks about our values on vegan and cruelty-free. And so we're very sensitive of what, we always say, we want, our vision is to create a different kind of beauty company, and we say different kind of company, period. And it's all about building brands that disrupt norms, shape culture, and connect communities. And so that's a lens we use, even in our marketing or other engagement elements of, is it doing that? If it's not, it's probably great for someone else, probably less interesting for us.
But so one of the products in the bag is the partnership with Alicia Keys, yes?
Yeah, Keys Soul Care.
Okay, and you all can thank Melinda for the gift bag, so just in case. And Tarang, but especially.
No, it's Melinda, for sure.
So she's got a hot Broadway show, Hell's Kitchen. So chicken and egg, did you partner with her before Broadway?
That mutually happened. Alicia had for years wanted to do something in beauty, but when she'd go to the big beauty houses, she's like, get me out of here. It just didn't speak to her, wasn't her people. There was a lot of the industry. She had done a thing where she was fed up of some of the external expectations that were put on her as a performer. So she even did this thing for a while of like no makeup and kind of popularized it. So the industry was actually pretty openly hostile to her because, they thought like, were you trying to kill this? And she was just trying to say, look, I don't want to cover up. This is about me. She uses makeup, by the way. She uses skincare products. So she wanted to do something in beauty, but she didn't find the right partner.
Okay.
We were looking for something in the wellness space as we kind of mapped out the future. We knew, like, you have hair care, skin care, et cetera. And so we jointly met and we aligned on this. The brand's called Keys Soul Care. It's important to take care of all those things. It's also important to take care of your soul. So it's a very ritual-based brand, a lot of positive affirmations, a lot of things Alicia believes in. All serious skincare too, because Alicia has been very public about, she came up at a pretty young age. And so between all of the bright lights, makeup, everything else he did as a performer, she struggled for years with her skin. And so, one of the co-founders of another brand, a brand we acquired called Well People, Dr. Renee Snyder, is a board-certified dermatologist. We've kind of worked out the right formulations. And so, that's been one of our focus areas over time, is build out our brand portfolio. And I would say Keys Soul Care is not as commercially successful as E.L.F. Skin or E.L.F. Color. or Natorium, a brand we bought a year ago. But it's something we deeply believe in because we feel it might be a little bit ahead of its time, this whole aspect, but we're committed to it because we're committed to Alicia, and we love what she stands for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so we have a stage gate really refers to our product meeting as we're developing product. As we're entering new markets, we have a criteria list on kind of how important is makeup or skincare in that particular market, what's the relevance within E.L.F. But we also are big on partnership. So if you look at our history in the US, we were an online brand that was somewhat discovered by Target. A Target buyer saw all the virality of E.L.F. and decided to test it. Target was our first national retail customer, and they have a head start, probably about 4 or 5 years over everyone else. Today, Target, we're their number one brand in cosmetics with over 20% of their entire category, compared to our national share of about 12%. And so that partnership approach is something we really look at, like who is the target of a particular market. And so we usually partner with a leading retail to help establish the brand in a country. Obviously, we build out the team. That way, we have a team in London that takes care of Western Europe or Europe and the Middle East. We have our US teams currently taking care of Latin America, but we will hire for Latin America. And then we've opened up an entity in India, which will handle a lot of our Asia expansion. So our approach is pretty disciplined, where we'll go with one leading retail in a country, establish the brand, and then what we find is others then come calling on us. Like we launched, like as I mentioned, in Rossmann in Germany. They have 1,600 doors. The day after we launched, DM came to us and said, "I can't believe you launched with Rossmann. We're bigger than Rossmann. Why don't you take us?" So it's that sequential strategy we do when we are thinking about a market, and sequencing is important. We still consider ourselves a small company, so we also know we can't do everything. You'll never hear me talk about, like, we're in 15 countries right now. We're going to go in another 15 this year. You'll hear about one country at a time, and then building out that breadth within a country is our approach. Yeah, so I mean, we weren't always vegan and cruelty-free. I think in the early days, PETA actually approached us because we had brushes with animal hair, and it was by the supplier kind of deemed as animal friendly. They said there's no such thing. So we actually went to synthetic brushes, formulated, then went to vegan. All these things are based on our community. When I look at our superpowers, the premium quality at extraordinary prices, broad appeal, the vegan and cruelty-free, those are values that matter to our younger consumer set. The other thing we've done is I mentioned a brand we acquired called Well People. They were doing clean beauty well before it was fashionable, plant-powered clean beauty. Mm-hmm. The reason we did that acquisition, because it was a pretty small brand at the time, was for the capabilities. So if you look at E.L.F. today, there's our clean standard. The FDA in the US only bans 11 ingredients. We don't formulate with 2,500 in our own standards. So these are a continuing journey as we go through, and there's a lot of paradigms of, oh, you'll never be able to formulate when you restrict that many ingredients, or you won't be able to get the supply base. We've been able to find all of that. So for us, though, it's really making sure we're keeping a lens of what our community responds to. We're also the only beauty company that's fair trade certified, because we felt like, just like we treat our team well, it's important that the workers, we're sure of kind of the conditions that they're operating under. Yeah, so my time is pretty simple. I got a great team that does great work. So the biggest allocation of my time is, do we have the right team? Do we have the right skills on that team? How's the culture? And so for me, team and culture is by far the number one thing I spend time thinking about, particularly as we've gotten bigger. One of the big challenges as you scale is the question I ask myself, that we ask with the board, is how do we actually enhance the culture as we scale? We've got exceptionally strong engagement scores, core scores. So I spend a great deal of time there. I get a great deal of time with the team, also with our customers. And now that we're expanding internationally, that's actually taken up kind of a little bit more of where the time is. In terms of my direct reports, it's no different than the types of questions I ask really any candidate, right? I really want to get a better assessment of the choices they've made through life, why they picked one decision versus another. You're going to learn a lot that way. I check for humility, and are they hungry? Are they willing to kind of learn? What's their curiosity? What's been their track record of showing their ability to evolve and change and grow over time? Those are probably some of the biggest characteristics I do. And then back to a ton of feedback. I remember I had probably many people on my senior team. I mean, some of them have been with me almost 15 years, but we're never assumptive on giving feedback. We do twice a year, we'll do a facilitated session where we'll bring in our high performance team coach, and every single person goes around the room. We pick one person at a time, and let me tell you 2 specific behaviors I really admire about you. Let me tell you one specific behavior that might be limiting your effectiveness. Everyone goes around, nobody argues the feedback. You get into it because we role model giving that feedback and making sure we're doing that as a senior team, because then it role models it for other teams as well throughout the company, of doing similar feedback sessions to make sure that we're continuing to learn, continue to get that feedback that we need. And so I think that's probably the most important thing. I've seen that with my son. Is doing an AI startup, and he's basically like, Dad, you know nothing about AI. I'm not taking your advice on this. But I'm like, yeah, but I know a little bit about teams. And are you, as a startup, getting in the ritual of how you give each other feedback? And because it's that pinpointed specific feedback real time that makes a big difference. And that's where I've seen variances in teams over time. Even when it's small and it's tight, if you never establish that, it's really hard as you scale to be able to have that level of performance and connection. And so that's probably my biggest piece of advice, is get into that the feedback loop early and make sure that you're prioritizing it. Because particularly for a startup, there's a million things you got to do, and there isn't enough time. Even when we bought E.L.F., E.L.F. was a small private company when we bought it. Everything we had to sequence to figure out what was more important. I remember when we first started, our ERP system was like a AS400 server in a closet at our warehouse. I was like, oh my God, somebody could just walk out with that and we'd be out of business. So we had first, all right, we're going to get on NetSuite. We got to get cloud-based. We got to do ERP. Then we got to do electronic EDI, the data management. Then we'll do a warehouse planning tool. It took us 2 years to get to replatforming our original e-com site. And so I'd say that those 2 things, making sure you're getting the feedback loop and making sure you're really clear with the sequencing of the priorities of what's important, are probably the 2 biggest pieces of advice I give, regardless of the size of the company. Absolutely. I'd say, we have, like everything else, we're test and learn. So we have our own version of kind of like Chat GPT that's private in the company. So everything's not getting out there. Training sessions, encouraging everyone to kind of use those tools. As I mentioned, we're very strong on social. I'll give you a little secret. If you interact with us on any of our social platforms, that's AI. It's like any other change management. Our community managers at first were like, oh my God, this thing's got errors. And I was like, yeah, I think you had some errors your first week on the job too, right? And now they love it. They love it because the amount of time it saved them, the quality of those interactions. There was a time where we were only answering like 40% of the DMs we were getting, which is, for some companies, that's great. For us, it's atrocious. I want like 100%. Right. And I want that engagement. So we're using AI there. We're using it in each of our core workflow pieces. We have a whole total cost of ownership model, which is highly intensive in terms of its data requirements and how long it takes people to AI. Within a matter of an hour, you can actually get the entire BOM of a product. So there's more pilots and things that are going. And then on the personalization front, we're still early. We can get the first part of the personalization journey done of you get on, we're going to change all of if you go on elfcosmetics.com right now, you'll see a bunch of rudimentary shade finders or product finder tools that will be totally transformed by AI. It's the back end we still haven't figured out yet of, okay, now I've got I can do personalized recommendations. I can do a number of different things. Getting to a personalized product
Yes.
A lot of the things we've seen on the market are more smoke and mirrors than actual reality. You still have like a pretty basic menu. So we're a while off from being able to do that. But it's going to change every core work process we have and way of doing work. So we're just jumping in.
Yes.
We're nowhere near where other companies are in terms of their level. But like anything else, once we get going on something, we usually get pretty good at it.
Great.
For us, it's too soon. It's too soon to see. I would say the core of what we look for in curiosity, that learning mindset, the ability to go try things and get better and smarter at it, that part is exactly the same. The specific skill sets that are going to be needed to really get the most out of it, we're still relying on experts in the area. Like we've hired as part of our kind of learning module, people that are in it that are doing kind of one series of sprints after another against work process to work process. Yeah, I mean, I would start in a couple of places. We post all of our core jobs, and I would connect that way because they'll put you in touch with the person in a particular area. Even if you're not interested in joining our company, we found that is a great way of kind of connecting into the right person. So Nicole Faulkner is the head of artistry at E.L.F. She has the education team underneath her. In fact, I could have just given you the name. Contact Nicole Faulkner, and she's building out that team and that capability. They're the same as entering the company. I'd say this whole aspect of curiosity and really making sure you're always learning. This job I love because I'm always learning new platforms, new things. I still haven't gotten all the emoji things down, but I got a team working on me, working on it. So I'd say that's one. I'd say the ability to your decision-making process and making sure that's clear and how you're communicating that. The connection. A lot of what I do is I connect people, and so the connection. I broadly sometimes put that into kind of continuing to hone your communication. And your communication style is a lot of what we do. The strategy and the strategy more from or like a lot of times it's to decide, and equally important a lot of times is to decide what not to do or what's not now, so you can keep the focus of where you continue to go. And then I would say like getting the right. I live my life through a lot of rituals where I free up like I do my exec team, which is my senior team, every Wednesday for 4 hours, the most valuable time. Where there's a lot of any enterprise-wide decision, I leave to that meeting, and the most valuable time in that meeting is the first hour and a half. We call it What's Hot. I want to know what's hot in your life, what's hot that you're hearing in the business. We'll talk, we'll agree, we'll do things. I talked about my stage gate meeting every other Friday. We have a sales and ops meeting where we kind of align on kind of the number and what we're going to go do. That leads to kind of a finance. And I do that because it then frees up huge swaths of time for me to actually think and to connect with people. And rituals and everything. Like if I don't work out between 6:30 and 8 in the morning, I'm not going to work out during the day. So I make sure like there's enough times where I do that. And I'm saying all this because I think one of the tips for being CEO is where are you finding your energy? How are you recharging? And how are you making sure that you're fresh and focused for what needs to come your way? I think the ones that end up being way overscheduled, and I have those days, the never-ending back-to-backs, but you need to find ways of actually being able to step back, really kind of assess kind of where are we and what more do we need to go do. So those would be a few of the tips. Yeah. So our corporate philanthropy is part of our purpose pillar is we commit to donating 2% of our profits each year, and it varies the causes we support. A lot of times it's the people that we're partnering with, the different things that we're doing, and I think last year we went to about 3%. So it's an important part. If you learn more about it, Melinda Freed, who's here, leads that effort. And so she can tell you a lot more about kind of what we're doing in the key focus areas. So regulation, I would say, I talked about we use a very different standard when it comes to clean formulations, just a much higher standard. I think one of the things we're seeing right now is inconsistent or regulatory approaches, particularly at the state level. I mean, Washington State had an initiative where it was well-intentioned. It was on lead in products, but you couldn't even sell water if you use that standard, and really couldn't sell anything if you did that. Now, going back and forth. So I think that's probably been the challenge is it's not one uniform standard. You're seeing different levels at different state levels, but it's like any company, you deal with it as we go through. For us, our lens is particularly as we launch internationally, some of those regulations are very different country by country, and it's just making sure we've got a great regulatory team that makes sure that we're fitting the standard of where we want to go sell.
On behalf of the entire Questrom community, we want to say thank you for spending time with us. We have, as a lovely parting gift.
Oh, I love it because, I'm a Californian and it's cold here, so I'm definitely going to use that.
So, Tarang, thank you for spending time with us, and thank you all for spending time with us here. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.